Have you ever seen or heard of a Chinese finger trap? I realized that if I approached you and this was the first question I asked you, you'd probably be confused and you'd want to get away from me immediately, but please bear with me. I promise there's a point. This is what they look like if you need a refresher. This is one of those like classic toys, kind of like Jack's or the yo-yo, a whoopee cushion, things like that. Now, why they're called Chinese finger traps is beyond me. I did try to research it, and the best I could find was some American article referred to them as Chinese back in like the 50s, which, kind of checks out. But anyway, the reason it's called a finger trap is because if you put one finger, usually your index finger, in either side of the trap like this, and you're then told to escape from the trap, your first inclination is to pull your fingers apart like this. However, when you do, you realize that the trap, it actually tightens around your fingers instead of releasing them. And that's why it's called a trap. It's a neat little trick that works because of a simple principle. The woven bamboo, which is what these things are usually made out of, there's green and sort of white on this one. Those strands, they tighten when they're being pulled apart, kind of like a knot. The bond between each strand of bamboo, it gets stronger when the pressure is on, enabling all of them to withstand the pull of my fingers. And in that way, your life and my life, they're kind of similar. Most of you already know that at some point, life has a way of putting on the pressure, trying to pull you this way and that, often to places you really don't want to go. And on your own, this pull is exponentially more difficult to resist than if you have others by your side resisting it with you. Especially for those of us who want to follow Jesus with our lives, there will be countless times where the pressure of this world will try to pull us away from what we believe, what we value, and the people we want to be. That's why it's essential that we find a group of friends who are resisting the same pressures and challenges we are, because alone we're like a single strand of this bamboo, which on its own would be tossed about in any direction the world takes it. But when there are multiple strands woven together, we can withstand any pressure, any attack on our reputation. Now, if you were here last week, you heard about a few guys who, through their bond, withstood a direct order of the king and earned a reputation across the nation of Babylon. Today, we're going to continue the story of three of those guys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And if you thought the pressure was on for them last week, well, it's about to ramp up like tenfold. Because sometime after these guys decide to eat and work in a way that honors God, they're put to the ultimate test of allegiance. And they have a choice to make: the Babylonian God or the one true God. Let's check it out. King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold, 60 cubits high and 6 cubits wide. By the way, that's about 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide. And he set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. He then summoned all of his officials to come to the dedication of the image he had set up. The image, it's really a statue. So the officials assembled for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and they stood before it. Then the herald loudly proclaimed, "Nations and peoples of every language, this is what you are commanded to do. As soon as you hear the sound of all kinds of music, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace." Like Ellis mentioned last week, King Nebi, he had no intention of letting people worship, follow, or be whoever they wanted to be. If you were a part of the Babylonian nation, you were going to be forcibly converted into a Babylonian, even if it meant being put to death for resisting. Now, as you can imagine, this was a major problem for Rack, Shack, and Benny, as the old VeggieTales story called them. Anybody still doing VeggieTales? I thought so. Anyway, as we saw last week, these guys were not interested in compromising their belief in God or sacrificing their reputation as God followers during their time in Babylon. Now, that said, this is the first time they've been faced with the threat that their reputation may come at the cost of their lives. So given these new stakes, their choice, it was going to be a lot harder. Now, you probably already know what they ended up choosing because we're here talking about them today. But if you don't, let's continue reading. Therefore, as soon as they heard the sound of all kinds of music, all the nations and peoples of every language fell down and worshiped the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. They bowed down to this golden statue. Now, at this time, some officials came forward and denounced the Jews. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "There are some Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who pay no attention to you, your majesty. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you have set up." In short, they're not bowing like you told them to. Now, we're going to continue their story in a minute, but let's bring it back to us a little bit. As with most stories in the Bible, you and I have some work to do in order to find the application for us. Like, why does this moment in time about these three dudes actually matter to me? Why should it matter to you? Is this story trying to teach us something? You and I, let's be honest, we're never going to be in that scenario, literally. But I'm willing to bet you've been in some that really aren't that far off. I know I have. Like when I was in high school, I had a group of friends who I loved and still love today. They were in marching band together, and we spent almost all of our time playing and rehearsing and competing together. Naturally, with all that time spent with each other, we got really close, both in and outside of band. So one day, one of my buddies invited me to a party at his house, and because we were so close at the time, I decided to go. Now, I'll tell you that the decision to go, it went against my natural inclination, which was to not go, because the only thing I'd ever heard about parties like this one was how illegal some of the activities were. Let's just leave it at that. However, again, at the time, this was my primary friend group. We didn't really agree about Jesus, but we did agree almost everything else, so I figured it was no big deal. I'm not going to tell you the details of this party, but what I will say is that it was the first and the very last one I ever went to. And what I'll admit to you is that while I really did not do anything illegal, I did some things I regret and make me wish I had never gone. In fact, I knew before it was over that you'd never catch me at one of these again. It was that bad for me. What's unfortunate is this party caught me at a time in my life where I was in between friend groups who were also Jesus followers like me. I had recently left my old church in Chesterfield and had only joined PCC like a year or so prior to this party. So my biggest influences were my band friends. And please don't get me wrong, I loved those friends. And like I said, I still do. Anytime we have the chance to see each other, even today, I'm really grateful, and I don't resent or blame any of them at all. What I'm really trying to say is that in that moment of my life, I was more or less alone in my convictions and my faith. And like the bamboo strands of the finger trap, without anyone else to help me resist the temptation, I gave into something I shouldn't have. And it cost me something. Now let's take it back to our story. I wonder how hard it would have been for Shadrach, Meshach, or Abednego, any one of them, to resist the urge to bow without the other two beside them. Imagine just one of those guys by themselves in the sea of people. I wonder if they would have been like those people who, without a second thought, compromised their beliefs, their values, and their reputations just to save their own skin. Would they have done the same and bowed that day? I wonder how much harder it would have been for them if, when they looked to their left and to their right, they didn't see two other people standing with them, but instead, all they saw were a multitude of people face down in the dirt, giving into the temptation to be less than they could be. Would they have bowed then? Well, we'll never know, because long before the pressure was ever put on them, They had made up their minds that they would stand on their beliefs, their convictions, and their reputations, no matter the cost, together. And as long as they had each other, they'd never have to wonder what they'd do alone, because that was never going to happen. Now, if we had more time, I'd read the rest of the story to you, because later, some of my all-time favorite verses in the Bible, Daniel 3:16 through 18, they make their appearance. I'm sad to leave them out today, but please make sure you go and read the rest of this story. Even if you feel like you know it already, I promise you'll learn something new. But what happens at this point when they refuse to bow is they're brought before the king. They're put on trial for their unwillingness to bow to the statue. And even in that moment, they continue to stand together and refuse, which guess what? Gets them thrown into the blazing furnace, real fire. Now, they survive this ordeal because God protects them, just like they believed he would. And the king himself undergoes a bit of a spiritual awakening, acknowledging that their God, our God, there's maybe more to him than the image of gold he had set up. And how could he not after he saw this miracle? There's so much application for this story in Daniel 3, but the application we're talking about today is this. You and I cannot resist the pressure of this world on our own. To navigate the negative pull of things like school, work, clubs, sports, some friendships, some relationships, even sometimes our own homes, going at it alone will eventually lead you to compromise what you believe. So if you're going to be a person who follows Jesus, who wants to find the fullest life possible, who wants to remain steadfast and grounded in the middle of whatever life throws your way, you're going to need to find your pressure friends. You must make it a priority to find the people around you who believe the same thing as you about Jesus, who want to live a life that honors Jesus at every turn, just like you do. And you have to put these friends, these people, in your inner circle, that you have to make them your closest friends. And of course, I'm not saying you can't have friends outside of church or anything like that. Not at all. But your closest friends need to be the people who are trying their very best to resist the same pressures and pulls you are. That way, when someone or something around you tries to take you to a place you don't want to go, you don't have to resist it alone. You'll have people standing next to you, to your left and to your right, who haven't given in, who haven't compromised, who haven't let themselves do something they'll regret. And it's going to make it so much easier for you to do the same. When you find these pressure friends and you really commit to doing life with them, you'll find that as the world pulls harder and harder, the tighter and tighter your bond will become. And together, there will be nothing you can't overcome. Now, up to this point, if you haven't caught on yet, in the metaphor with these finger traps, you and your pressure friends have been represented by the trap itself. Because again, when life pulls you apart, the bond tightens, just as I said a moment ago. But did you know that this metaphor actually works the other way as well? Because there's a simple trick to getting out of this trap that helps show the importance of your friends as well. In order to see it, though, we kind of have to flip the metaphor on its head. So take a moment and imagine that the pressure and pull of this world is actually represented by the trap now, and you and your friends are the fingers that are inside. You'll see, again, as you and your friends drift apart, the pressure of the world increases, and you're stuck. But when you and your friends draw closer together and you're intentional about strengthening your own bond, the pressure actually releases, leading to freedom. So however you look at your life, if you're going to follow Jesus well and build a reputation that matters, you're going to need to find other people to do it with you. So wherever it is you are right now, all of our campuses online, I want you to look to your left and to your right. Because chances are really good that around you right now are plenty of people who are trying to do what you are. So why not start here and find some new friends? If you'll be intentional about that today, then years from now, when the pressure of this world mounts, you'll have close, meaningful, established relationships that will help you resist and refuse the pull of the world away from Jesus. And as you continue to come together, you'll find that the pressure gets less and less, leading to freedom. So find your pressure, friends, here and now. I want to pray for you about that in this moment. Would you pray with me? God, the pressure of this world as we get older and older feels like it gets stronger and heavier. Lord, so my prayer today, our prayer today, is that we would be able to find people around us who are trying to resist that pull, resist the heaviness of the temptation to be people we weren't created to be, to do things we're not supposed to do. God, help us to find friends who are trying to do that too, who are trying to be who you called them to be, who you made them to be. Lord, because if we can strengthen our bond with one another, then we can find it easier and be much more capable at resisting the pressure of this world. God, you created us all along to do this together, not alone. So thank you for providing a space where we could find others to do life with. Help us to establish those bonds right here, right now. We love you. Amen.